And so, good morning to all of you who are listening to Millennium Radio. My name is Patricia Chibiliti, welcoming you to the interview this morning. And I have in the studio not a new guest at all, but one from whom obviously we are set to learn this morning. And this is Wynter Kabimba, State Council from the Economic Front. State Council, good morning.
Good morning, PC. Good morning, dear listener.
Okay. And today we really wanted to speak with you. We wanted to tap into your brain, as it were, with regard to the Public Gatherings Bill, which successfully passed third reading 2 days ago and now is just waiting for the President's signature before it becomes law. Yes. But before we go to talk about that, I want to understand, and I'm sure ija Public Order Act ija yamene sinachoka nayo from 1955 tingo tachinjako hapa tafakako kakoma hapa tafakako na statutory instrument hapa. What was wrong, or what were we trying to cure in that Public Order Act? Ni vichani wamene venzo funika mankwala in that Public Order Act, for which we have gone through of Public Gatherings Bill. State Council.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think we are discussing a very important piece of this legislation which impacts on the provisions of the Constitution, in particular the right of citizens to gather and assemble for purposes of public discourse. What is it that the current administration is trying to cure? You can only answer that question if you give it a bit of history. Give it the Public Order Act a bit of history, and then you see the context.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you look at the year the Public Order Act was enacted, the old one, 1955, it was during the time when there was a surge in nationalism. Okay, the agitation, the demand by the African nationalists that Zambia must become an independent sovereign state. It was past 9 years just before the date of independence in October 1964. The idea by the colonial administration was to actually regulate, control African nationalists who were to go around the country to mobilize for independence. So that fundamentally was the reason. Bazungu banali kufuna kuti abantu bakuda bakaunda na banzao bonse bamene kukamba tifuna ufuru bazazipeza mpata wakamba kuti bazikumana bazungu banali kufuna kuti bamene banali mu government benewelensi banali kufuna kuti aba bantu bamene bali bonse chenda kuziwa kuti lero baenda kuti lero bazakamba chiyani.
Okay.
That was the idea of the Public Order Act. So we came with that act from 1964. We worked with it through the one-party state. Yeah. Now, it's important to understand, Patricia, that during the one-party state, public gatherings were not a problem. They were never a problem. So the Public Order Act sort of became, a silent ghost, so to say.
Why would you say they were not a problem?
Because all the gatherings under the one-party state, all the political meetings were organized by the party.
The one party?
The one party, yes. Okay? So they had 3 candidates, Wynter Kabimba, Patricia Chibiliti, Banda, as candidates in one constituency. We didn't arrange those meetings. The party arranged those meetings and just presented us as the candidates. And then the people were asked to choose one amongst us. So the Public Order Act did not become contentious. Then we transited into multi-party in 1991 and took over the Public Order Act, whose spirit and intention was totally not in conformity with the democratic environment. Because the right to assemble, which was there even under the one-party state constitution, the right to assemble was there. But the right to assemble now became a fundamental right, more of a right than ever before, if people are going to organize themselves into political parties. But the MMD government didn't want to amend the act. The MMD government did not want to visit the act until 1995, when the National Party was formed. There was a breakaway in the MMD. Emmanuel Kasonde, Christine Mulundika, and others. They left the MMD and decided to form the National Party. And when they tried to organize, they were stopped. So they decided we shall go to court. So they took up the matter in court. It went up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said the provision in the act, and this is important, the provision in the act that demanded a citizen to apply for a permit for them to assemble was unconstitutional. So they struck it out. Okay?
Okay. So can we pause there? With the strike it out
Yes.
of the Mulundika case in the Supreme Court. We'll pick this up. I think it's super important, this point, and then we'll pick it up after the break. Right now, we go to a break for headlines, and then we'll come back and we continue this discussion. Remember, my guest this morning is Wynter Kabimba, State Counsel, who is also from the Economic Front. Good morning. Welcome back. This is the interview radio program on Millennium Radio. Those of you on the Copper Belt can catch us on 100.1 FM, Kapiri 93.9 FM, Kabwe 93.5 FM, and Lusaka and all the surrounding areas, all the way to Mazabuka and Chongwe, we are on 90.5 FM. My name is Patricia Chibileti, and my guest in the studio this morning is Wynter Kabimba, State Counsel, President of the Economic Front. And today we're looking at the Public Gathering Bill, which passed a third reading successfully 2 days ago and is now just waiting for presidential signature to become law. Before we went to the break, State Counsel, you were giving us the background to the Public Order Act. I had asked the question, ni chani chamentezo funika mankwala muri Public Order Act? Chamentezo sakirira mankwala kapena ni Senji Corporation. What was it that we were trying to cure in the Public Order Act that led us to the Public Gatherings Bill? And you were giving us the background, and you ended up saying that when the National Party was formed as a breakaway from the MMD, and they struggled to meet, they went to court.
Yes.
All the way to the Supreme Court.
Yes.
And Supreme Court finally ruled that the clause or whatever that required you to obtain a permit from the police was against the fundamental rights of freedom to assembly.
Yes.
Then why are we still... Sorry. Please go ahead.
That's a good question. That's a good right there. Why then are we still in this?
Why are we still in the?
Why are we still in this situation? Now, again, this is important. You know that what has been wrong with the Public Order Act post 1991 and post the Mulundika judgment, which now only required you and me, when we want to assemble, to merely notify the police.
Kubazivisa chapi
Bakapokola ife zakumana siku yakuti. And the reason for that notification was to enable the police to give you security as citizens. Doesn't matter your political affiliation. The police has a duty, once you have notified them that, economic front will be having a meeting in Kamwara on such and such a day. The police are obliged. They don't do you a favor. They are obliged to provide you with security to ensure that nobody harasses you during that period of your rally or your meeting, or that amongst yourselves there is peace and harmony. Now, the amendment was 1, no police permit, 2, notification for 7 days to the police. That is what has been the problem. The enforcement of the Public Order Act more than the provisions. And I think that is important to understand. That the police were still operating under this hangover that they had a right to say yes or no to your gathering, to your assembly, which power they didn't have. They've been going through so many workshops, but that the police did not yield. So that has been the problem. So anybody that wanted to deal with that situation, you can't deal with it without this police mentality, which fails to appreciate that this is a democratic dispensation and that the police is a people's police. It doesn't belong to an administration or the ruling party of the day. It belongs to the police. This mental, condition, the conception that bakapokora babantu ba Zambia, siba PF bakapokora, siba UPND, siba MMD. That is where the police has failed the country more than the law. Okay? It's important to understand this, otherwise we'll be going round and round. So I've listened to, and I've seen the provisions of the new public gatherings bill, which will be translated into an act, very soon. Okay? It is not even the provision. So, those of the people that are saying, no, Mugakumana, your wife and your 2 children, therefore you are in breach of the law. Oh, Mugawana Valendo, Batoka Kasama, Makumana, therefore, so Kukasama, Kulishani Kukasama, if you feel the China, Sugar Naidura, therefore you are in breach of the law. No. The problem, actually, for me, and I've been in practice, I've been there over this matter, both in the opposition and when I was in government. The problem fundamentally is the police. Bakapokora. If Bakapokora can change their attitude and get to understand that we are in a democracy and that they do not belong to a political party, we are going to have a civilized society. So the primitivity that is aligned to the enforcement of the Public Order Act has its genesis in the police. Okay? I remember when we were in PF in the opposition, they had a very good man, Mr. Mooney, if you remember, PC, he was the commanding officer at Lusaka Central Police here. Very nice guy. I remember one time as PF, we wrote and sent a notification to the police that we are going to have a rally in Kamwara on a Saturday. We delivered the letter in good time to comply with the 7-day notice. 3 days before the date of the rally, Mr. Ngoni called me as SG. I went to his office and he said, Mr. Kabimba, Please, can we find a compromise over this matter? I said, Nichani of that. He says, we don't have enough officers to send to your meeting on Saturday. Is it not possible for you to move your meeting to the following Saturday? I said, oh, that sounds reasonable. Oh, let me go and speak to Mr. Sata. I went to Mr. Sata and I said to Mr. Sata, okay, you know, the police are suggesting that we move the meeting from this Saturday to the following Saturday. And Michael Sata says, there's no problem. So I phoned back Mr. Nguni and I said, next weekend, no more changes. Mm-hmm. And the man said, no problem. We'll make sure that there is enough security. No. Win-win situation. The police wins, opposition political party wins, the party, you know, the government wins, and there is peace and harmony. That has been the problem. I hear everybody debating this matter and leaving out the police. They are actually the problem more than the law. From what I've seen myself, both when I was in the opposition and when I was in government.
So, State Council, now that you have explained that, does the public gathering bill therefore address the perceived issues with the Public Order Act? Or are we again like just honing in onto the same problem that again is going to be an issue of enforcement?
Of course. There's nothing that because the problem I'm highlighting here is an attitude problem. Okay? You can train a police officer to rely, you know, but you can't deal with the attitudes. Okay? And a lot of problems that we face in this country, you know, or PC, are attitude problems. More than any real issues. They're attitude problems. The police, let me give you this example. Chikwalete went to Chinsali one time during the PF period. He went to Chinsali to go and mobilize the Rainbow Party that time. He arrives in Chinsali. Everybody in Chinsali hears that you know, the fellow is there. DC had a job description. So anything it is job. Yes. So DC, you know, the district intelligence officer doesn't have enough work there to gather intelligence. So when he sees, you know, there, then there is work. Chito ya pezeka pamoja ningale report. Maybe unga pezeka kwa wita promote. The following day, Chikwalete peeps through the window and finds, you know, there is the police officers outside there, OP, you know, and everybody, and saying you can't have a meeting. Okay? So he calls me. And he says to me, I have a problem. I said, what is the problem? He says, you know, there's a contingent of police officers outside saying that we can't do a meeting. I said, okay. Just be calm, remain calm. I called the ECL as the president. I said, Chikwalete is in Chinsali, he is in a lodge, and he's supposed to be mobilizing the party there, and there is police outside and OP. What the hell are they doing there? President, tell me. And the ECL said to me, Mwana, uzo wakapokola wena ubanga ajabe overzealous. He could be reasonable at the times, eh? It's not as bad as it. It says,
we're not going there.
Leave it to me. Oh, the views expressed on this program are entirely mine. So don't worry about that. So, he says, give me 5 minutes. I came to learn later from Stephen Kabimba that he actually called him and said, what are these police officers doing, you know, in Chinsali? You know, Chikwalete is there and you know. By the time Chikwalete peeped after 10 minutes, he found everybody at the
was alone again.
Into thin air. Okay? Now, that had nothing to do with ECL. It would have been easy for me to go to the radio station and say, you know, this Edgar Lungu, you know, we are mobilizing at Mavaka Pokora, you know, and you know. The poor guy didn't even know what was going on inside. Problem, police attitude. Problem, DC attitude, you know. Problem, district intelligence officer attitude. And everybody, permanent secretary, you know, and everybody. Nothing to do with it. And yet, they know the law. There lies the problem.
State Council, so where does this attitude and assumed power come from? Is it because the Inspector General of Police is appointed by the president? Is that the genesis of this?
No.
I mean, through the various administrations. You're talking now about the PF, and now if we talk about the UPND, you find same overzealous.
Even during MMD.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
MMD.
So is it because the Inspector General is appointed by the president? Is that where this comes from?
No. You know, all these officers invariably all over the world are appointed by the head of state.
No.
I'll tell you the problem with Zambia. Appointment yabantu banjala. That is the problem that we have. Okay?
Mm-hmm. What does that mean, Banjala?
You know, people that think that apart from a civil service job, they have no life on this planet Earth. So they must, you know, what I call a principle for, you know, a phrase for that. They must then keep the job by not doing it, or do it wrongly, to please the appointing authority, to please their supervising officers. That is where the problem is. And I've been there before. So I know, Patricia, what I'm talking about. Okay? If you are going to appoint somebody who has no confidence in himself or herself, if you are going to appoint somebody who doesn't think that his service is to the country, which invariably is what happens in this country, then you have wasted that appointment. Okay? It's like, let me give you this example. It's like the intelligence field. In countries like Zimbabwe, you have a minister for state security. Mm-hmm. He actually receives intelligence reports. Okay? We don't have that position in Zambia. So the Director General of Intelligence thinks he's beholden to the president. And yet the president is simply a repository of state security. So he goes there, you know, or he holds that position to read intelligence briefs so that all of us are secure. But when you come to, you know, to the practice, the intelligence think that they're there just to protect the president, not you and I. Attitude. Nobody teaches them that at the you know, or their training, you know. They just adopt that as an attitude. What the Eastern Province people call Muzungani Konde. Now, can you legislate against Muzungani and Konde attitude? You can't.
So, have we cured anything then?
Nothing. As far as I'm concerned, this is just academic, so that the UPND can, you know, go out and say we have amended the Public Order Act. They changed the name from Public Order Act to Public Gatherings Act. You know, God knows where they got that from. You know, so they have scope. They put it on the list.
Okay, so let's take a quick break. But when we come back, I just have one more question before we open the phone lines. Now, I want to ask you very quickly about an officer can disrupt a meeting because he or she reasonably believes that there is a threat to public order. But it doesn't say what is a threat to public order. So
this is where the issue of attitudes comes in.
Yeah.
This is where the issue of attitudes comes in.
And then the appeal, I have 14 days in which to appeal, but the minister has forever in which to answer. Welcome back. This is the interview radio program. My guest is Wynter Kabimba, State Council, also Economic Front President. And today we're looking at the Public Gatherings Bill, very soon to become law, as soon as the president puts his signature on it. And before I went to break, I was saying I had a quick question. And my quick question is, Kabimba, people are very concerned. You know, ngati muli 5 or more. Mweno tenga permission kapemba kuli wakapokolati fefune mwashana kuli na balendo wachoka kasama so taita nako na bambuya na yama atitibwetidile pamozi. Are those people included in this? Tabula kwa Kabimba, I tagged along a friend, so in the end we're 18.
You know, as a country, when we are discussing these things, we should not be alarming each other. We should contextualize them. Okay? I think the issue is when you are discussing a matter of public interest. In other words, in that discussion, kambe kamungani kama politics.
But,
okay?
Sir, I think that is very normal, even in family gatherings, to have a discussion around politics. There's 18 of us, we're having lunch on a Sunday. Chetwa says, no matter what, and me, I'm saying, no matter what, that's a political discussion.
I think there is somewhere where it says in a public place or something like that. I think I read something, to that effect.
Okay.
Yeah. So
not munyumba.
No. Otherwise, in Ishito's example, mangi all over Kapogola Bazache. And look, politics has become the daily bread of the citizens.
Yes.
In any democracy. Okay? And this is why people should not be riled, when they hear criticism. Because that is what you expect in any democracy. It's only in church where only one person is preaching and all of us should keep quiet. Not in a democracy. In a democracy, all of us must have an opinion. Whether you think my opinion is silly or otherwise, I must be allowed to express my opinion. So to start alarming people that, when, 3 brothers meet or 5 of them have raised the threshold now to 7, a family of 7 meet, therefore, no, that's just being alarmist. And this is how we miss educating one another.
So there's no issue there.
No. There's no issue. The issue here is, busy, I'll be honest with you, and I've been there myself, it is one of enforcement. Law enforcement agencies, in particular, the police.
State Council, one of the criticisms around the public gathering bill is that, like you said, in the Public Order Act, there was a problem with attitude and overzealousness and wanting to please the master and so on. And so police very often, took things overboard and exaggerated and so on. But now there are actually clauses which are protecting the police to say, police can disrupt a meeting. Whatever that means. But the police now in clause 4, subclause 2, has been given that power in the law to disrupt a meeting.
Yeah, that is where the problem is. That's where the problem is. Because you are not setting a benchmark for the police officer. You are leaving that to his or her subjectivity.
Mm-hmm.
It happened to us one time we were at the meeting in Kabwe, and we had notified the police. Okay? Then somebody walked into Hindu, Hindu in Kabwe, and whispered to me and said, the police are on their way. They're saying that this meeting is illegal. I said, let them come. And when they arrived, we showed them the notification letter. They themselves, through their confusion. So I told them, go and put your house in order. So when you put provisions like that and you don't get to train the police officers, you are really creating more confusion in the enforcement of the law. Okay? That is what you are doing, especially when you have these allegations, that police service has become an employment ground for party cadres.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So the fellow is more of a party cadre than a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
And you put a provision, like that. You're just creating more and more confusion. Okay?
There's another one which refers to if for whatever reason a meeting is disrupted or stopped by the police, and myself as the person who convened the meeting, I'm unhappy, I have 14 days in which to appeal to the minister.
To get what? How to waste my time? To get what?
I don't know if it's relief
It's
or
not,
something.
it's not as if we can go
Zimbabwe,
back to the day of that meeting. What nonsense is that? To get what?
Yeah, but it's now in this public gatherings bill. But the minister, according to this bill, has no time frame in which he should respond.
No.
So he can respond in 6 months, he can respond in 2 days, he can respond in 40 days. So it kind of makes me appealing to the minister just an exercise in futility, because he can answer whenever he wants to answer.
You know, Thomas Jefferson, the American president, said, if men were angels, there would be no need for a government. Government is there because men and women are not angels. So likewise, when you have been on this road before, like I've been, and you listen to provisions like this, then there's no seriousness, in this. Like I've said earlier, they just want to cut this logo that they amended the Public Order Act. PF failed, to do it, and that kind of thing. Yeah? It is clear to me that even as UPND suffered so much at the hands of the police on account of the provisions of the Public Order Act, they didn't learn what the problems were in that piece of legislation. They didn't learn. Otherwise, they would not come up with this kind of piece of legislation and think that it is progressive. It isn't. It isn't. The problem here is a combination of the police and at times the politicians. That's where the problem is. I've given you an example earlier. I mean, I come by ECL.
Mm-hmm.
It's not ECL's problem. It was not Kampiongo's problem. Both of them didn't know. Kampiongo didn't know as Minister of Home Affairs. But the guy in Chinsari thought that he was doing his job. He was discharging his functions on behalf of the president. The president PF, Remy Bokuno, that's what the fellow thinks. Completely ridiculous in thought and divorced from the provisions of the law. So we are going to continue having the same problems that we have seen before. I think that will be my conclusion. That this piece of legislation will do nothing to mitigate the problems that
to change the status quo, nothing
we saw under the old Public Order Act.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
The State Council, very quickly before we open the phone lines, is there anything in this public gatherings bill that you see as maybe a positive change, or there's some progressiveness about it? And, is there anything in this which justifies us having to move from Public Order Act to Public Gatherings bill?
Well, they have increased the threshold now from 5 to 7. But this, even in arithmetic, 7 is a bigger number than 5. So you can call that progressive.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something else that the minister said yesterday, and said that now political parties can have indoor meetings.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to notify the police,
Mm-hmm.
which was not the case in the past. In the past, again, I remember being in Kitwe at one time. We were having an indoor meeting, and the police came to tell us you must disperse.
35M.
Okay? They came to ask us to disperse. And MMD. Not even PF, and MMD. We had to get into arguments with the police, and then after that they backed down and withdrew. So there is just this thing of Patricia, people not accepting that this is a democracy, or paying lip service to democracy because the word is nice, to pronounce, and doing completely the opposite. I also argue that it appears that we moved away from the one-party state on paper, but not in terms of institutions and attitudes. So what we see today are one-party state attitudes. Okay? You must have a patriarchal, leader. You hear every time people saying, the president is the father of the nation, that kind of thing. The president is not a father; he's a president.
But kind of Sunga.
Yeah, it's not Sunga. This is Sunga. Not looked after by the president. The president looks after the country. He doesn't look after me. Okay? And I can't have a biological relationship with the president. It's ridiculous. Is it? My chief. Okay? I don't have a biological relationship with my chief unless I'm related to him, like is the case with the senior chief Shakubia. But they can't tell me, but keep quiet, because I'm your father. He's not my father. Because even my own biological father, I'm able to debate with him.
0962 870921 0962 870921 is the number to call if you do want to interact with our guest, Wynter Kabimba State Council from the Economic Front. And today we're looking at the Public Order Act versus the Public Gatherings Bill, and what were we curing and have we cured it? Good morning. Good morning to you, thank you.
Good morning, sir, thank you.
Yes, sir, David. Yes, we are. Please, what's your question or your comment?
The question there is that number one, who were playing what they were waiting for.
Thank you. Okay, we take another call, 0962870921. Good morning. You're through to Millennium Radio. Good morning. Yes, for Brian.
Get away no Brian Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Your point is taken. Thank you very much.
They allowed him to finish.
0962870921. Millennium Radio, good morning.
Vewe no Mujani.
Ndifewe mkwaendeana na banani? Mkwa Brian. Mkwai?
Thank you, Brian.
Twa Twatotela about Brian Kulwansha, thank you so much. Let's take one more call and then we can begin to ask the questions. 0962870921. Good morning. I'm quite Mabombe. Bakatongo. Quite. Thank you so much. Okay, we'll begin with David in Lusaka. If you were president, what would you change in the Public Order Act?
Okay, let me make this point so that we are all clear. Every country in this world has one form of the Public Order Act or another. Every country without exception. Yeah? That's very important to understand. So it is not as if this piece of legislation is unique to Zambia.
Yeah, from Zambia, mweka.
Awe. Abafunde aya Public Order Act abantu kukolonganya abantu baikala balande ili ashiri ya politics or bagiteshani demonstrate abakonse. There's an act like that in the United States, the biggest democracy. There's an act like that in the United Kingdom. There's an act like that in France and everywhere. So I think it's important to understand this so that we don't think that this is just
unique to Zambia.
Unique or peculiar to Zambia. That's an important point. The caveat in most of these countries is that the demonstration, for example, shall be peaceful. Okay? So you're allowed to demonstrate, to express your discontent about load shedding, for example, as long as that demonstration is peaceful. Here, even a peaceful demonstration is not allowed. That's the difference. If you follow what is going on in the United States, during the Gaza problem, there were demonstrations by university students. And they were allowed up to a point when they became violent. So the anti-Israeli group meets, the pro-Israeli group, and then there's some fight. Then the police intervene. And in the UK, in London, there is a similar problem.
Yes.
When people organize themselves to demonstrate in favor
of Palestine,
of the Palestinian cause, it became violent and some people were arrested. So, what is at the core of the Public Order Act is public peace. I think that's important to understand. We are not animals, we are social beings that are organized in a certain way. So there must be rules as how we relate to one another. And the Public Order Act, or the Public Gatherings Act now, as it is going to be called, is intended fundamentally to regulate these social interactions amongst us so that we live in peace and harmony. I want to go back to my point that the problem is not the act. The problem is the people that are vested with the power to enforce the provisions of this act without substituting their political affiliation, their regional affiliations, their ethnical, thinking, and read that into the act. That is where the problem is. If you have a guy like me as Inspector General of Police, then you'll be safe. Because I told the president, sorry sir, if you want, you can take your job. I'll not die. But if you have an IG or some provincial commissioner of police who thinks that getting fired for doing the right thing, it's like removing, the oxygen pipe from him in the ICU, then you have a problem. And I think this is important, Patricia. I want to emphasize this. The problem fundamentally is not even the law; it is the human beings.
So, if you're president, what would you change? That was the question.
If I were president, from the experience that I've had, in this, I would actually start with the police before I even get to the law. Okay. Because I know where the problem is. Okay. I would actually start with the police, give them a crash program to tune their attitudes, their mental faculties, and make them understand that they are a police service for the Zambian people, not me as president. And then after that, I'll get to the law. There's no need for you, there's no need for you to have good provisions of the law when the enforcers,
it's not okay,
at variance, in terms of enforcement of that law.
Okay. And comparing with the Zelensky days, are we making progress in this public order space? Comparing to where we were in 1955 when we started this, and today, that was the question for the day.
Yeah,
have we made progress?
It is a very good question. It is a very good question. It's a good question because now we are actually meeting ourselves as Zambians and apportioning the blame to one another. We didn't have that opportunity under Zelensky. Because Zelensky didn't report to the Zambian parliament, he reported to the Queen in London.
Okay.
So I think we have made progress between Mr. Roy Zelensky, whose boss was sitting in London, or the Minister for Colonial Territories, in London, and now when we are dealing with the president that is in Zambia.
But Brian in Mpongwe is saying that, in his opinion, this is a very good bill because it safeguards lives. Would you prefer that bantu bakumana bachenchana bamenyana na mamachete or what, or would you rather have this bill?
That is out of context. It's important that when you want to phone in Brian, listen to the discussion. Okay, this is not it's not UPND which is introducing the Public Gathering Act for the first time in history. Okay, this has been here with us from 1955. So when you want to make a contribution, don't read into the discussion what is not on the table. I think we should not even spend time on him. I don't want to
another Brian in Luansha, he says, when is a Zambian going to become important in this country? Some of the bills that have gone through, sailed through, no member of parliament went back to the grassroots to discuss with them, to inform them, and so on. Is it that their opinions are not important and that these things are not going to affect them?
Exactly. Brian raises a very, very significant point, which was troubling me when I was member of parliament, nominated. And I could sit in parliament and listen to elected representatives of the people debate a bill, or sometimes debate an item on the floor of the house. And PC, during tea break, I would walk to some of them and I ask them, when did you consult your constituents? Is what you are saying personal opinion, or does that come from the people? So Brian asks a very important question. And I remember going to President Sata, and proposing to him that what we needed to do, PC, was that we must introduce legislation that compels members of parliament to go back to their constituents to go and consult. I can tell you 90% of what you listen to in this house are personal opinions of these guys. So Brian is right. We are discussing the Public Gatherings Act. What is my MP for Rwanda, for example? Since he's in Rwanda.
Mm-hmm.
I never heard myself that the MP for Mwebeshi, where I live, has ever convened a meeting about the public gatherings. But I'm sure he debated. Okay? So this representative democracy does not mean or imply that once I've voted for you for 5 years, you should not come back to me. I take it for granted that what you think is what I think. No. It requires constant consultation with the voter. So Brian is very right. And I had a problem with this when I was member of parliament, because I could listen, to people. Some people would even rise and say, no, I rise, on behalf of the people of X constituency. We have that among the exam. Do rise, Madam Speaker, I rise, on behalf of, ask him when he saw the people that he is talking about.
Okay. Then very quickly, Wakatongo, he says, in his opinion, the laws don't look good because also the MPs did not consult. Is it possible that if there's a change of government, they can come and reverse these laws?
Yes. Yes. If a piece of legislation is obnoxious, the next administration has the right. The only problem that you have in this country is that even that change may not be for the better. Okay? But there's a question that you left out there. Somebody who said, does it mean that the Zambian people now, when are the Zambian people going to do what? There's somebody who asked you.
It must be the same Brian from Russia.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
When are they going to benefit?
That, you will only benefit Brian once you learn to choose or elect the correct leaders.
Okay.
If you much type in, like a packet of sugar, ever umeba, munja like a proverb, muchibemba, ever umeba, you're always going to make mistakes and you always be crying and lamenting. Learn to evaluate people. I know that the human mind is about what you see outside, or a human being. Learn, to evaluate people and learn to elect the men and women of integrity. Like Jethro said to Moses, for those of you that go to church, Jethro had a very good piece of advice.
Brilliant.
Brilliant. I love that those verses in Exodus.
Yes.
And he said to him, listen, if you are going to pick men, and I'm sure he included women, to help you discharge the functions of this position you have, here are the characteristics of those men. Firstly, they must be God-fearing. Okay? Secondly, they must be righteous. Okay? But the one I like most is where it says you must find men that hate bribery. Not that don't like, but that hate corruption. Find such men.
And unfortunately, we've run out of time on this program.
Shakespeare says, time is man's enemy. So I understand.
Much as we would like to continue the discussion, we've really run out of time. And so in closing, State Council, in a few days, maybe in a few hours, the public gathering bill will become law. And we're going into a serious, very tense campaign period. What is your word? One, to ask the public, and two, to those who will be at the forefront of these campaigns.
Look, my first piece of advice is actually to the police as law enforcement. Because this period is about meetings, about rallies, about everything. That makes those that are going to contest the elections sell themselves, as individuals, as groups, and also their manifestos as to what they want. The police must facilitate that process for everybody, and equally, maybe not 100%, but to the extent that they can. There should not be the obstacles in this process. For the people, listen to the candidates. Don't vote out of anger. Our people are steeped in this culture of voting out of anger. Ala mona Patricia Chibiliti, shamu votere. Adeya. It's not as simple as that. It's not as simple as that. So understand the candidates, that but if your relative is a cousin to the devil too bad, find somebody there.
On that note, thank you.
Not to represent you.
On that note, thank you so much for coming, and thank you to all of you who listened. Good morning.